series looking at Bible stories. Two reasons, because all of these things, all of these stories, God puts them forward as an example to us. They're lessons that we can learn from them. Also because, sad to say, but a lot of us don't know all the details. Again, I was just talking about this one yesterday, and George is going, I'm going to have to read that again. I'd forgotten all about that part of the story. Well, we Nancy Honeytree talked last time about how she became a Christian. God has a wonderful plan for your life. That's how the 4 Spiritual Laws by Campus Crusade begins. We're reminded that Jesus said, I have come that they may have life and have it abundantly. That you could have life that is full, it has meaning. I read Jesus' words, and my question is, why is it most people don't seem to be experiencing that kind of life? Sadly, sometimes even in the church, right? They're not experiencing what you would call an abundant life. Well, keep that question in mind as we turn to the story of Jacob today, Genesis chapters 25 through 35. And no, we're not going to read every bit of it or anything like that. We're just going to select out certain parts. But if you want to have your Bible open, that's where we're going to be, Genesis 25 through 35. We start with Isaac and his wife Rebekah, a marvelous love story in the Old Testament. Rebekah is childless. Isaac is 40 years old. And decide, okay, it's about time to get started with this family. So Isaac prays, and Rebekah gets pregnant. Now, it says there that she's pregnant, and it's not necessarily an all-fun pregnancy. It says the babies jostled each other within her, and she said, why is this happening to me? What's going on here? So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb. You're going to have twins, sister. You're going to have twins. 2 peoples from within you will be separated. You think they don't get along now? Wait till they're born. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. And so the babies are born. The first one to come out is one of those kids who already has his hair. Got a beard and a mustache. I don't know what he has, but he's born, he's a hairy baby. He's a hairy, red-headed baby, kind of like giving birth to a Sasquatch. And out comes Esau. But as they take Esau out of the womb, Jacob is right behind him. I would say right on his heels, but it's more than that. He's actually holding on to his heel. Jacob is holding on to Esau's heel. But God has a wonderful plan for both of these lives, right? You know what the Bible tells me? God has a wonderful plan. And I find that all through Scripture. I read in Jeremiah. God says to Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I had a plan. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Before you were ever formed in the womb, I already knew what I wanted to do with your life. In Jeremiah, it also says, and this is one that we hear a lot of times at graduation time, I know the plans I have for you. God loves you and has a wonderful plan for your life. I know the plans I have for you, speaking to a whole nation of people who are in captivity at this point. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Over in Psalm 139, one of my favorite passages of Scripture, my frame, the writer, David, is speaking to God, my frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. I mean, David's pushing it back even further. I mean, woven together in the depths of the earth? Well, if we were made from dust, and that's how Adam was made, David's pushing it all the way back to the beginning of almost time and going, even back then you had plans for me. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. So there has to be a plan for these two that have been fighting and wrestling in mom's womb. One will be stronger, the older will serve the younger. And as they grow up, the two are radically different. They're radically different. The younger is going to be kind of the leader. The older is going to serve the younger. But as they grow up, they look at the younger one, Jacob, and they think, he doesn't look like a leader at all. He doesn't display any of the qualities that you would think you would want in a leader. You remember when Israel was getting ready to choose a king? Well, it's got to be Saul. Look, he's taller than everybody. That's what you want in a leader, you know. You want him to be tall. Nobody even says, we want them to be godly, we want them to be smart, we want them to be brave, we want them to be wise. We just want him tall. He needs to look presidential. Jacob decides, okay, if I'm going to be a leader, I'm going to have to figure out a way to play the system because everybody thinks my brother Esau is the leader. If it's going to be, it's up to me. And so is born the first scheme of Jacob. Jacob decides, okay, if God wants me to be the leader, then I'm going to have to figure out how to make this happen. I know the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out a way to get the birthright. The birthright is a double portion of the inheritance. Instead of the inheritance being divvied up, the inheritance pie being all slices of the same size, the birthright means you get a double portion. You are recognized as a leader. It is very symbolic. And one day while Esau has been out hunting, he comes back in. We don't know if he's been successful, but he's been out long enough that by the time he comes back to camp, he is starved. And Jacob, who likes to, Jacob is kind of a homeboy. Esau likes to hunt and kill things and skin them and dress them and bring them home. Jacob likes to cook them and write poetry about them and sing songs and paint. And there's nothing wrong with that stuff, but they're different guys. They're different guys. Esau comes home and Jacob's there cooking. And Esau says, give me some of the soup. I'm starving, man. And Jacob goes, okay, here's my opportunity. I'll give you some soup. I'll give you some of my stew. Yes, it's very good. It's red stew like you like. And because Esau apparently likes anything red. Probably wears a red robe and all that kind of stuff. But I'll give you some of the stew, but you have to agree that I get the birthright. You're the older brother, but you're going to give me the right of the older brother. I'm going to get a double portion of the inheritance. I don't know, Esau's thinking to himself, man, oh man, we're born like 5 minutes apart. Who cares? I am hungry right now, so deal. It's a deal. Just give me the soup. Esau makes a life-changing decision based on his appetite. But before you condemn him, consider how many diets have been abandoned. How many diabetics have had their numbers go sky high, or cholesterol has been ignored, or savings that we had in the bank have evaporated, opportunities that we've had that got squandered. Why? Because our appetites made our decisions for us instead of wisdom. So Jacob makes his first play at getting what was promised to him by God. God has promised that the younger is going to rule over the older. One brother will be stronger than the other. God has already made a promise here, and Jacob's making his first play at making that promise come true. It's like God's plan for your life is a point on a map someplace out there. It's like a GPS point, and if you can just get to that point, then you'll get the blessing of God. Now, this is just me and the goofy way my brain works. If anybody here has seen the movie, and it's an older movie, Rat Race, it reminded me of one scene. Here it is. Yeah.
Here's a town called Silver City, New Mexico. Gold rush. Quite right, Nick. Yes, they struck gold there in 1860. It was the second largest gold rush in American history.
Very good, Nick. I think we should look at it.
In downtown Silver City, there's a train station. As you go in the front door, there are some lockers on the right. Mr. Grisham, do you have the keys? 6 identical keys. They all open the same locker. That's locker 001. Inside the locker is a red duffel bag. Inside the red duffel bag is $2 million. In cash, 50s and 100s makes a part of it. So big. First one there. Keeps it all. Oh, and I put little transmitting devices in your key ring so that I can keep track of you. And that's it. Go.
You just can't pick people at random.
I can do anything I like. I'm eccentric. Go.
Wait, so it's like a race?
Race? He's a race. I hope I win.
What are the rules? There's only one rule. Are you ready? Here it is. There are no rules. Go. Go.
So now, when you say go, you mean just go?
Begin, commence, start moving. Theoretically, you have been racing for about 40 seconds, and so far, Mr. Schaefer is winning because he's nearest to the door.
I know, my brain is weird. The whole thing that struck me is it's a race and it doesn't make any difference. There are no rules. There are no rules. God has this blessing for Jacob. And it's almost like Jacob thinks his blessing is like a place out there, and it doesn't make any difference how you get there. That God, there are no rules. Just whatever it takes to get there, that's what you need to do. Now go. And there are a lot of Christians, that is precisely the way they approach God's blessing. God's blessing is a place out there. If I could ever get enough of money or get the right location, or the right job, or the right wife, or the right husband, or the whatever. If I get there, then I would have God's blessing. So, at the end of chapter 26 in Genesis, we get another snapshot into Esau. We begin to understand why God in his wisdom said, the older will serve the younger. Esau is still a man who's consumed by his appetites rather than by God's will. And so he marries 2, not 1, but 2 local girls who are not followers and not worshipers of God. And this incident should probably give you a little hint into, a little peek into, some insight into what happens next. Chapter 27. Isaac is getting older, and before he dies, some 30 years after this, he wants to pass his blessing on to Esau, his oldest son. Now, Isaac probably knows what God told Rebekah about the 2 boys that were in her womb, right? That the older will serve the younger. When I read this and I realize that Isaac is planning to bless Esau, shouldn't there be a question that comes up in my mind like, why is he blessing Esau? When he knows that God said Jacob is supposed to be the leader. Is Isaac going against God's blessing here? I mean, Isaac knows that Esau already sold out his birthright for a bowl of soup. He already knows that Esau has married 2 local women, and it says right there that Isaac and Rebekah, it bothered them that he married 2 girls who weren't followers of God. Why is Isaac going to bless Esau? I don't know. Let's keep reading. Rebekah hears Isaac speaking to Esau, and the gears go into motion. We got to do something about this, because the text has already told us that Isaac loves, his favorite is Esau. Jacob is Rebekah's favorite. And you begin to see stuff starting to happen here. Now we're going to have to do something very quick here. So Jacob, here, just listen to me. What I want you to do is go get a sheep, a goat from the herd. I am going to cook it up and make it taste like venison or whatever it is that Isaac really likes, whatever wild game he likes. I'll cook it up so it tastes like that. You go and get some of Esau's clothes and put them on you, and the stinkier the better. You want to smell like Esau. And Jacob's going, but Mom, Esau is hairy. You remember that from the birth? Giving birth to the bath rug? I mean, the moment my father touches, and the text tells us that Isaac has pretty much lost his sight at this time. But the moment my dad touches me, he's going to know it's not Esau. That's okay, I've got that covered too. I've got some skin from the sheep that I'm fixing here for your dad to eat. And we're going to kind of cut the skin off and make it, and we're going to attach that to you. And that Esau must have been something to see. But we're going to put some, we're going to put that skin on your arms, and don't worry, it's going to work. One of the things that strikes me is that clearly Isaac and Rebekah don't have the wonderful relationship they once had. Do you pick up on that? They definitely aren't as close as they used to be, because here they are both scheming to get their favorite kid ahead. They have their own agenda when it comes to this. Yeah, that's one of yours. Enjoy it.
Daddy.
Yes. But, they both have their own agenda when it comes to this blessing thing. And when you go through the story, Isaac is, Jacob comes into him. Father, here's your soup. Here's your food, your steak, whatever it was. And Isaac says, well, you sound like Jacob. Are you really Esau? And he can't see. Apparently he must touch his arms. And he says, you smell like Esau too. Esau has that distinctive smell. You smell like Esau. Your arms feel like Esau. This food is the kind of food Esau would prepare for me. You sound like Jacob. Here's the thing. When you gave the blessing, it was supposed to be witnessed. You didn't give the blessing alone. It was supposed to be witnessed so people knew that you had passed the blessing to this particular son. Why are there no witnesses? Because Isaac knows he's giving the blessing to the wrong person. Not the person God would have him bless. And so therefore both of them, Isaac and Rebekah, are both kind of playing fast and loose with all of this stuff. And the crazy thing is the whole plot works. Isaac gives the blessing to Jacob thinking it's Esau. And then when Esau comes in, there's no more blessing to give. Because if you read the blessing that Isaac gives to Jacob, I don't know what else you could say. You're going to be rich, and you're going to be wise, and you're going to be powerful, and you'll have tons of children, and your brother will serve you. Only he thinks he's talking to Esau. And by the time Esau actually comes home, there's no blessing left. It's a very sober, somber blessing that Isaac gives to Esau. Esau is in tears, begging his father, surely there's a blessing for me. But there isn't. The good blessing has been given away. So the plan works, but then it doesn't work because it blows up in his face. Because Esau is mad. You stole my birthright, and now you've stolen my blessing. I'm telling you, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill that Jacob. Where is he? And Rebecca realizes, we've kind of opened a can of worms here. Jacob, you better get out of here. I'll make up an excuse with your dad. And the excuse is, I don't want Jacob to marry one of the local girls the way Esau did. Let's send him back to my brother's house, way over in what would be like modern day Iraq, northern Iraq. Let's send him there to find a girl from a kind of a godly family. And Isaac, that's where he got his wife. And so, he agrees to that. The whole plot works, but then it doesn't work. Because you know what? And as you read through the story sometime, if you read the whole thing, you tell me if Jacob, over the course of his life, got one dime more than what God promised him. Did all of his scheming and all of his conniving and all of his plots and finagling and sweet deals, did they get him anything more than what God promised him? I'll tell you what I think. I look at the record and I go, no, didn't get him anything. It cost him a ton. It cost him a ton. The whole thing is if they had just let Isaac go ahead and bless Esau, well, God's going to figure out how to do something here. Would God's plans have been derailed? Would God's blessing have been ruined if Isaac went ahead and blessed Esau? I just think of how much we miss by not simply trusting God. I remember the story of the disciples in the boat. And they're in the middle of a storm, and the boat is getting swamped. But Jesus is in that boat. He's asleep up in the bow of the boat. And the disciples are shaking. How can you sleep at a time like this? Don't you realize the storm that's on us? Don't you care if we drown? Now, in all honesty, if they hadn't awakened Jesus, would the boat have gone down and the plan of salvation been short-circuited, derailed? Now, I don't know what would have happened because they woke him up in a panic. Jesus wakes up and goes, you have such little faith. How long will I put up with you guys? But panicking because you think, okay, God's plan can't work out unless I do something here. So the plan falls apart. Jacob flees. Abraham's grandson is on the run for his life. The one through whom the promise is to be fulfilled. There has to be some confusion in all of that. When Abraham's grandson, the one who should have fulfilled the promise, what on earth happened here? Well, you remember Moses? Years later, centuries later, Moses is a prince of Egypt at this point, and he sees an Egyptian mistreating a Hebrew slave. And Moses kills the Egyptian and hides his body. I don't know what Moses was thinking, but maybe he knew God's going to use me as the deliverer. And so therefore, I'm going to start delivering right now. But here's the thing with Moses. He had the right mission because God does use him to deliver Israel. He had the right person. It was him that God was going to use. He had the wrong time and he had the wrong method. You can be almost right when it comes to God's will. Almost right. Right person, right mission, wrong time, wrong way. How often have I messed up too? Because I thought I knew better than God how his plans should work out in my life. And how many times have many of us messed up also, because we were convinced that we knew better than God how his plans ought to work out. And so therefore,
J.G. Wentworth, we say get cash now for your structured settlement.
J.G. Wentworth, cash now?
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
J.G. Wentworth is right. It's my money and I need it now.
It's my money and I need it now!
It's my money and I need it now!
It's my money and I need it now!
If you have...
it's my blessing and I need it now. And maybe you weren't that crude with God, but I guarantee you, many of us have had that attitude to God at times when it comes to the blessing. It's my blessing and I need it now. So Jacob runs and he runs and he runs till he collapses. He's exhausted. And that night he has a dream in which he sees a stairway that's resting on the earth and reaching up to heaven. And there are angels going up and down this stairway, this stairway, this ladder, whatever it is. And God personally is at the top of the stairway, and he speaks personally to Jacob. And he says, I will bless you, I will protect you. The promises I gave to Abraham, I'm giving to you now. You don't have any children right now, but you will have children. I'm going to bless the world through you. You can count on it. Everything I told Abraham, I'm telling you right now, and you can count on me. I will take care of you. Jacob wakes up and goes, wow, this is it's like the doorway to heaven. God was here, and I didn't even realize it. So he takes the stone he's been using as a pillow, and he tips it up on end and pours some oil on it, and he calls the place Beth-El. Beth meaning house. El is the shortened name for how they would refer to God. You know, we have the name El Shaddai, God all-powerful. Beth-El is the house of God. And he makes a vow to God. Check out the vow Jacob makes to God. Then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and watch over me on this journey I'm taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's house, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I'll give you a tenth. Jacob's vow is a contingent vow. If then. It's all an if-then statement. What's wrong with that picture? Well, what's wrong is it reminds me of some of my own responses to God's faithfulness. How many of our commitments to God are peppered with if-then statements? If you will do this, then. How often is it, yeah, but what have you done for me lately, God? That is not the pathway to blessing. That's not the pathway to blessing. Jacob continues on his journey, and he comes to Haran. At a well outside of the town, he meets Rachel, who is his uncle Laban's daughter, and she's cute. I mean, Jacob, if he were here today, he might say, no, she was hot. She was really, oh man, she was awesome. Word gets to Laban that his nephew from Canaan, Isaac's son, has arrived, and Laban hurries out to meet him, because the last time somebody came from Canaan to meet Laban's family, Laban made out very well, because there were a lot of gifts at that time. And so he rushes out to, yes, oh, Jacob, so glad to see you. Laban's happy to host Jacob. And he notices, you like my daughter, eh? Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's cute, isn't she? Yeah. Nice, still a good cook. So you stay. You can work for me. Tell me what do you want me to pay you? And in this instance, Jacob the deceiver, because that's what his name means, deceiver. Jacob the deceiver has met Laban the liar. There's a little principle of God here to recognize in this situation. You'll see it here in Ezekiel too. God is talking about, telling Ezekiel, I'm going to send you to speak to my people. And I'm telling you right now, they are stubborn. And they don't like to listen to anybody. They are hard-headed. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you just as hard-headed as they are. So if I'm a stubborn, hard-headed person, what kind of person is God going to send to straighten me out? A stubborn, hard-headed person. Every now and then ask yourself if the reason you've got so many jerks in your life is because... Finish the thought. But one of those principles that I see, and if you look for it, you'll see it repeated throughout Scripture, is that God says, I will send you teachers who are just like you. A stubborn man will require a stubborn teacher. And so God brings into our lives people who are like us to shape us. What else does it mean when Proverbs says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another? It means God's going to send people into your life that are just like you. And all those people that drive you crazy, did you ever stop and consider maybe the reason they drive you crazy is because you drive other people crazy? Shut up, Dave. Move on, Dave. Laban says, oh, you like Rachel, do you? I'll tell you what I'll do for you. Since you have no way to pay the bride price because you had to flee and you had no pocket cash and there are no credit cards, I'll tell you what I'll do for you. You work for me for 7 years and you can have Rachel as your bride. And so Jacob serves for 7 years to get Rachel. And what Scripture says is it just seemed like a few days to him because he was crazy about her. And after 7 years, the time comes to collect his reward and to marry his love. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife. My time is completed. And I really I want to lie with her. That doesn't mean they're going to go around saying, spreading lies. You know what that means. I can't imagine saying it to my father-in-law. Ben, Carol and I have been dating for a number of years now, and it's time for me to marry her because I can't wait to. Yeah, that's what he's saying, isn't it? Now, don't miss this going, Dave, come on. That's so distasteful. I can't believe you're even pointing that out. Well, my time is completed, and I want to lie with her. Does that imply to you that they have not lain together yet? Please don't miss this lesson, American culture. They have dated for 7 years and have postponed having sex. Why is it that America thinks that, well, but you mean you dated 3 times and haven't been to bed yet? What's wrong with you? Do you realize God's standards here? You can actually go for 7 years dating someone that you truly love and not have sex with them. Yeah, but not in America. Really? Maybe you're like me, you never noticed that little gem hidden in that verse. You can remain pure. You can remain pure in a dating relationship. And that is part of God's plan. That is part of God's will. So they celebrate. At the appropriate time that night, Laban brings his daughter into Jacob. She is beautifully dressed and discreetly veiled. And they retire to their room, and they do their best to make up for 7 years of patient waiting. And as dawn's early light brightens the room the next morning, Jacob discovers Laban's treachery. He hasn't married Rachel, his love. He has married Leah, the nearsighted older sister. I told you, Jacob has met his match in Laban. Furious, he challenges Laban, "What have you done to me? I worked for Rachel's hand, and you've given me Leah?" Yeah, Jacob, not fun being on the other end of a scheme, is it? This time you were the one who couldn't see because you were in the dark. Well, your voice sounds like Leah, but you must be Rachel because, you've got Rachel's perfume on, and I'm pretty sure that was one of Rachel's gowns that you were wearing. So you must be Rachel. Ooh, does that remind you of any other incidents in Jacob's story? Laban weakly argues that it's not right to marry the younger daughter off before the older daughter. I did as much reading as I possibly could. I'm not sure that really is a tradition. I think Laban might be just kind of making up an excuse there. But I'll tell you what, if you just kind of finish the marriage week, they celebrate for about a week. At the end of the week, we'll do another quick ceremony, and you can have Rachel, but you have to work for another 7 years. Jacob's trapped. And with that marriage of the two sisters, Jacob's domestic life enters into a war zone. A war zone from which it probably never truly recovers. War erupts between Rachel and Leah over who will have the most kids. You see, you can read the text. I'm not going to put it all up there. But Leah knows that Jacob does not love her. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being married to somebody and knowing they don't really love you. There's somebody else. And oh good, it's the sister bride. What great joy. Leah knows that Jacob doesn't love her, but she hopes that maybe he will grow to love her, or perhaps at least respect her if she has children, sons. And she has 4 sons: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. And Rachel doesn't have any kids. And so Rachel is angry and jealous. And she goes to Joseph and she says, "Give me children!" Huh? Am I in the place of God? You think I'm the one who's keeping you from having kids? What do you want me to do here? And so Rachel, here's the great solution again. Well, here's my servant girl. Take her. Any sons you have with her, I'll count them as my sons. And so Bilhah, Rachel's servant, sleeps with Jacob, and she has 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. Now I've got sons too. Leah goes, well, 2 can play that game. Zilpah, her maidservant, sleep with Jacob. And she has 2 sons for her too, Gad and Asher. And one day, Leah's son Reuben is out in the fields and he finds mandrakes. It's some kind of a plant. I don't know what the big deal is about it. Some of the reading I did said it's kind of like an aphrodisiac. It could be used as an aphrodisiac. I don't know. Rachel confronts Leah and says, well, the last thing you need is an aphrodisiac. You've already got more sons than me. Give me some of the mandrakes so that Jacob and I can make some whoopee later tonight. And Leah's arguing, yeah, right. I already know he loves you more than me. You think I'm going to help you on that? Okay, no, here's the way it'll work. I'll give you the mandrakes, but Jacob is mine tonight. And so, Jacob becomes basically a gigolo. His wives are hiring his services. Jacob comes in the fields that night, and Leah goes, oh, you're not going to her tent tonight. You come to my tent. I already paid for you with my mandrakes. Really? You want to have a peaceful domestic situation? Try and get this one going. Leah has 2 more kids, Issachar and Zebulun. Rachel has finally a son, Joseph. And after Joseph's birth, Jacob is going, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. There was a promise way back in my life someplace. God told me something about he was going to bless me. And yeah, I've got kids. Oh boy, what a blessing. I've got 2 wives and 2 kind of wives. Oh yeah, what a blessing. I got to get out of here. I thought my life was supposed to mean something. I thought my life was supposed to be blessed. This is nonsense. I've got to get back to that promise. And so Jacob approaches Laban and he says, can I just leave? Just send me on my way. I want to go back to my father's house. I want to go back to Canaan. Just give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and I'll be on my way. I don't need it. Just let me go. You know how much I've blessed you. Let me go. But by the same token, I want to get out of here, but I don't really want to go home empty-handed. Because I spent all that time tricking my father and stealing from my brother. It would really look bad if I go back to Canaan empty-handed. I'm supposed to be the blessed one. I don't want to show up at Mom and Dad's house with nothing to show for all my years of being away. I don't want to show up with just a whole brood of mouths that now need to be fed. Dad, can the 75 of us here move in with you guys for a while? You still have the basement room? Yeah, we'll live in the basement. We'll be all right. So he talks to Laban, and Laban says, well, what do you want me to give you? Well, you don't have to give me anything. Listen. It's not, you don't have to give me anything because God has promised to bless me. Notice that. It's, you don't have to give me anything because, here's what you can do. Go through the flock and pick out all the spotted and speckled and dark lambs and rams and, that you have in your flocks. And, common sense and just watching deer propagate, they would both know that most of the time you're going to get a white sheep or a white goat, and occasionally you'll get a spotted, speckled, dark one. And so Jacob says, just go through your flocks, pick out all the spotted, speckled, and dark animals. Those will be mine. All the white ones are yours. That way you can always tell if I've been stealing from you. You can just look at my flock. You see a white sheep in there, that's one of yours. Laban's going, remember, Jacob the deceiver is talking to Laban the liar. Yeah, that sounds fair. See, Laban has other sons. Just a minute, I'll be back with you, Jacob. We'll sign up those papers and we'll get that actually down. We'll document that. Go out to the flocks and take all of the spotted, speckled, and dark ones. Get them out of the flocks and take them 3 days away. Okay, Jacob, I'll sign on that. Yeah, you sign right there. There we go. Okay, let's go out and take a look at the flocks. There are no spotted, speckled, or dark ones in the flocks. Well, that's too bad. But we got the paper here. We got the contract. That's you get to keep the spot. And I guarantee you, Jacob's furious now. But he doesn't say, God has promised to bless me. He says, I saw this trick done someplace. And he grabs some twigs off of some trees, pulls off the leaves, and then uses a knife and strips the bark so that they are striped. And he lays the sticks in the troughs when the deer come to, when Laban's sheep come to drink water. And when they're in heat and they're going to be mating, he makes sure that they're facing those sticks because those sticks will make them have spotted, speckled, or dark animals. Yeah. Next time you're trying to raise a breed of puppies, just remember, get some sticks from the backyard, strip them down. I tried to do some reading on this. I tried to do some research on this. I find nothing that says, I don't know any American rancher or sheep herder who does this trick. I don't think it works. Do you think that for 1 second, the fact that Laban's flocks suddenly begin producing a whole bunch of spotted or speckled, or spotted or speckled sheep, you think that's because Jacob used those twigs? No. God blesses him. But what do you think Jacob thinks caused it? Oh my goodness. So, Jacob's flocks increase in spite of Laban's cheating. And yet again, the plan blows up in his face because he finds out very quickly that Laban's sons are starting to grumble. He has ripped our dad off. I don't know how he's doing it, but he has ripped our dad off. And Jacob notices that Laban's attitude is starting to go south on him too. And so he calls his wives together and he says, I see that your father's attitude toward me isn't what it was before. I mean, your father has been, the God of my father has been with me. And do pay attention to that. Whenever Jacob refers to God, you read through these 10 chapters, most of the time, and the overwhelming amount of the time, when he talks about God, it is the God of his father. It's not Jacob's God. You remember? It was an if-then statement that he made to him. If you will do this, then you'll become my God. And he's consistent with it. He talks about the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of my father, but he doesn't talk about his God. That hasn't happened yet. I've worked with your father for your father with all my strength, and your father has cheated me. He has changed my wages, and that doesn't mean he made them go up, he made them go down. 10 times. So Jacob waits until Laban is gone. And when Laban is gone, Jacob gathers up his family and his herds, and he takes off because he wants to get at least, his goal is to get across the Euphrates River. You can look it up on a map, you can Google a map, find out where Haran is, and you'll see the Euphrates River about 50 miles to the west. Jacob's hope is if I can get the Euphrates River between me and Laban, he won't be able to catch up to me. It doesn't work because Laban does catch up to him. And the sparks do fly. The sparks do fly. Laban is not happy. But they do get it settled. And they erect a little boundary marker, a little pile of stones that they pour some oil over. And this is this is the theme of this boundary marker. May the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are apart. And I always thought that was just the sweetest. What a wonderful verse of Scripture. When our family, my folks were missionaries, when we left Guyana in 1965, that was the verse, that was the theme of the church saying goodbye to us. May the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are apart. Oh, that's so sweet. Except when you read the context of when that said. That verse is written between two guys who hate each other's guts. What that verse actually means is God's going to be watching you because I don't trust you any further than I can throw you. I don't trust you at all, Laban. Well, I don't trust you at either, Jacob. Sounds beautiful until you read that context. Jacob hits the road. He meets some angels. He meets some angels along the way. Remember when he fled from Esau the first time, he woke up with a vision and he saw angels going up and down between heaven. On his way back to Canaan, he meets angels again. And he's thinking, okay, good. This is like a sign that God is with me. This is great. Man, that's terrific. God is with me as I go to meet Esau. Oh, yeah. Esau. The brother I cheated, not tweeted. The brother I cheated twice. Oh, yeah. I'm going back to his area. And so he sends a message on ahead. You guys go tell my brother Esau that I'm coming and I'm looking forward to seeing him again. Hug. And word comes back, oh, Esau's looking forward to meeting you too. Matter of fact, Esau's already on his way here, and he's got 400 men with him. Now, this is the guy that you ripped off the birthright and you stole the blessing. When you find out he's coming with 400 men, what do you do? Do you think, oh, this is great, I'm in a hurry so I can see Esau? No. Jacob panics. He panics. What am I going to do? Well, I know I'm supposed to trust God. I'm one of God's people, so I need to trust God, but what if I bribe Esau? Yeah, I'm going to trust God and bribe Esau. That's my plan. That's the way to the blessing. Trust God, but bribe Esau. And so he takes all of his herds and all of his family, and he breaks them up into little groups. And out in the front, he has 200 female goats and 20 male goats with some servants. And then they're supposed to maybe put a couple miles between them and the next group, which is 200 ewes and 20 rams and some more servants. And then between them a couple miles, and then 30 camels with their young, female camels and their young, but then and servants, and then about a couple miles between them. And then 40 cows and 10 bulls, and then 20 female donkeys and 10 males. And he spaces them out, so Esau is going to be getting, there's going to be these herds coming at him every half hour to an hour or so. And then he divides up the family. Okay, the one servant, Leah's servant, she's out in front with her kids. And then put a little bit of space between them, and then we'll put Rachel's servant with her kids. And then a little bit of space, we'll put Leah and her boys. Thanks, Jacob. Once again, you're reminding me where I stand in your love. And then behind her, we'll put Rachel and Joseph. And behind everybody, alone, is Jacob. Now, I can't read Jacob's mind, but all I can say, it seems to me like the plan is either we will buy off Esau with all of the herds that we send, or by the time he gets to me, he'll be so tired of killing people that he'll maybe he'll spare me. I don't know exactly what the plan is. And then Jacob settles in for the night, alone, beside a little stream called the Jabbok. And in the darkness, a man approaches him. Somebody grabs him and begins to wrestle with him in the dark. No street lights, no flashlights. He isn't trying to be seen out here. He's scared to death of his brother. It is pitch dark. You're down in a stream bed. And a stranger is wrestling with him, is attacking him. He fights for his life, but he can't escape. But he can't overpower the man either. They wrestle all night long until finally, as dawn is approaching, it's not dawn yet, but as dawn is approaching, the guy just kind of reaches down and touches Jacob's hip. And it goes out. Anybody who's had a hip go out, you understand the fight's over, isn't it? Well, the fight still continues, but the fight is a different fight now. Because now the man is wanting to get away from Jacob, and Jacob is holding on for dear life, because if he leaves me in the stream bed, I can't walk. I'm in trouble. I am in serious, serious trouble. If he leaves me alone, I will die. Here's the deal. Isn't this where God wants to get all of us? To a place where we finally realize and acknowledge that if he leaves me, I will die. And think of how much God has had to do to get you to that place where you acknowledge you need him more than anything else in your life. As dawn begins to break, the man attempts to break away. Jacob clings even harder, and he demands the guy bless him. Have you ever met the God who sometimes has to cripple us in order to bless us? Have you met the God who sometimes cripples us in order to bless us? Why would it be necessary to cripple someone to bless them? Well, I'll tell you this, back in the day when Carol and I were college students, newlyweds, stupid, we had 13 parakeets at one time in a 2-room apartment. Not wise. One of the parakeets we inherited, his name was Quibo. there was a guy's house, off-campus house, where Quibo had lived. And the guys, I mean, seriously, the guys had terrorized him. I mean, that poor little bird had been terrorized. They would throw firecrackers in his cage. They would, I mean, it was not good. And we got a chance to get Quibo, so we took Quibo in. You know the thing? All of the other parakeets, I mean, if you put your hand out to them, they'd hop on your hand, go up your arm. Not Quibo. You reach for Quibo and he panicked. And we would let the parakeets out of a little apartment, so we would let them out from time to time so they could really fly. It was cool, no problem. They listened to us, they, yeah, come on. Not Quibo. Quibo panicked. We had a little gas heater. It was one of these things that it's got a pilot light, and you turn a little lever, and that releases all the gas, and you can see the flames in there. I mean, there's nothing fancy about our heat. Quibo was so panicked one time he got inside of there to get away from us. Now, there was a moment where I was thinking, just turn it on. It'll smell like chicken. I know, that wasn't right. We got him out eventually. You know what we ended up having to do? We ended up having to clip one of Quibo's wings, so that all he could do was fly in little circles. And he would exhaust himself, and then you could put your finger down there and he would slowly hop on. And after, however long it takes for a wing, the feathers to grow out again, by the time the feathers grew out again and he could fly, he wasn't scared of us anymore. But we had to, quote, cripple him in order for him to let us get close to him. You ever think God has to do that in some of our lives? You ever think that God has to do that for some of us? This is from the Psalms, Psalm 55. My heart is in anguish within me. The terrors of death assail me. Fear and trembling have beset me. Horror has overwhelmed me. I said, oh, that I had the wings of a Quibo. I would fly away and be at rest. I would flee far away and stay in the desert. I would not stay in this situation. But God says, I need you to stay in that situation. Because it's in that situation that you're going to grow in the way I want you to grow. I want to get out of here, God. I hate this. I don't like this. This is painful. This is miserable. I don't want to stay here. God says, but I want you to stay here. But we think we know more than God when it comes to this blessing thing. I know how to get the blessing. The meeting with Esau is totally peaceful, no fireworks. Esau has forgiven Jacob, but still Jacob can't trust Esau. And so when Esau says, Jacob, I'm so glad you're back, man. I'll tell you what, why don't you just go ahead and follow me, and we'll go over to where I'm settled. We'll find you an area to settle in. And Jacob joined. Little lie here. He learned this from Uncle Laban, I guess. It's great, Esau. Great to see you too. Got some of the ladies have babies, and some of the cattle have young ones, and we can't possibly keep up with you and your 400 men. So I'll tell you what, you just go on ahead, and we'll follow, and we'll catch up to you, okay? And Esau's going, yeah, that's okay, but what? I'll leave some of our men to help you. No, you don't need to do that. Just go on. Get out of here. And the moment Esau is out of sight, Jacob goes the other direction. I don't completely trust you, Esau. Probably doesn't trust him because he knows his own heart. He knows how crooked his own heart is. He goes to Shechem, the town of Shechem. And at the town of Shechem, he pays some silver and he buys a plot of land, and that's where he sets up camp. That's where he's going to live now. And he builds the first altar he has ever built in his life. An altar is a place where you meet with God. Jacob has been a pillar man to this point. Pillars are, yes, on that spot God did something neat for me. And on that spot God did something neat for me. And at this point God did something neat for me. But an altar is a place where you meet with God on a regular basis. This is the first time Jacob has built an altar. He builds an altar and he calls it El Elohei Israel. El is that name for God. God is the God of Israel. When Jacob was wrestling with that man, the man told him, your name is Jacob, deceiver. But from now on, you're going to be called Israel. God defends him. First time he ever identifies God as his God. First time. But naturally, things blow up again. His daughter Dinah is raped by the prince of the local town, Shechem. But, ironically, the prince's name is Shechem. He rapes Dinah, and the father comes out to try and resolve the situation. Dinah's brothers have nothing to do with this. They are furious. And it's understandably, we understand it. And so they come up with their own little scheme. We can't let God handle this. We'll take care of it. They come up with their own scheme, and their scheme is, this can't be settled. I mean, you could read, there's more to it than the details I'm giving, but I'll give you the essence of it. The key part of their scheme is, we can't have peace unless you and all the men of Shechem are circumcised the same way we are circumcised. Now, it's kind of a stupid thing because the men of Shechem aren't God's people. They're Canaanites. That should tell you right there that this isn't really, this isn't about circumcision. They agree, and then it says 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords, attacked the unsuspecting city, and killed every man in the city. I mean, that's, would it be news if Angola showed up and slaughtered every person in Butler? This is what happens here. Every man in the town is killed. No, there's nothing right about it. There's nothing right about what they are doing. It is totally wrong. But I really believe that this story is communicated to us because Jacob, who is finally starting to recognize as God as his God, suddenly realizes that through all these years he's been teaching his kids. He's been teaching his sons. And now his sons are doing the same kind of stuff he has been doing his whole life. And so while he is getting his act together, his sons' lives are going down. And he realizes, I'm the one who has planted these values in these kids. I'm the one who's taught them to figure out things on their own, to not even think about what God wants, just do what they feel like doing. And he goes to his sons and he says, what have you done? Are you crazy? What are you thinking? You have made me a stench to everybody in Canaan. This is where we have to live. My household is destroyed. Everybody's going to be trying to kill us now. It is open season on Jacob and his family. And so it's panic. Worst case scenario just keeps playing out in his mind. But God speaks. And Jacob listens. A rare quality. And God says, Jacob, do you remember years ago you fell asleep when you were fleeing from your brother Esau? You remember you had a vision of a stairway and angels going up and down? And I personally stood at that stairway and I told you my promise. I told you that just as I was with Abraham, I would be with you. You remember that, don't you? Yeah, I remember that. Do you remember that when you woke up the next day, you said, if, then? Well, Jacob, I've done all of the ifs. I didn't need to, but I have fulfilled every condition you laid down. You haven't done any of the thens. When will I become your God? Not just the God, but your God. Not just the God that on occasion, when you're panicked, when you're scared, when life isn't turning out the way you want, then you'll talk to me. But in the end, you're going to decide for yourself what you want to do. You are not going to do what I want you to do. When will I become your God? God meets with Jacob again, just like he did down in the stream bed of the Jabbok. And again, he tells him his name. Your name is not Jacob. You have lived your whole life the deceiver. You're going to get by your own wits, by your own cleverness, by your own strength. That is not who you are. You are Israel. You are Israel. God contends. Israel. There's that name for God. It's not me fighting, it's God fighting. It's not my fight, it's God's fight. So where are you on your journey with God? It's a long story, I know. I knew it would be. Where are you on your journey with God? Not even started? It's not that you don't believe there is a God, but to this point, He is not your God. Like I said, if you read over this story, those 10 chapters, most of the references to God, the overwhelming references to God, are the God of Abraham, the God of Israel. He is God, but He's not Jacob's God. Yet. It's not till late in the story that He finally becomes the God of Israel. Israel being Jacob's new name. So if you haven't even started your journey with God, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Or maybe you have started your journey, but the truth is you still live as though it's all about you. What you want, what you can do. If it's to be, then it's up to me. God's blessings, God's promises are just another thing that you have to figure out how to accomplish. It's one of the reasons you don't like reading the Bible. It's one of the reasons because it just feels like, oh, there's more things I have to do. You're misreading your Bible if that's what you're getting out of it. You should be getting out what God wants to do in you and through you, what God wants to do. There might be some here, you're just exhausting yourself trying to earn something that God wanted to just give you. See, when I read Jacob's story, that's what I pull out every single time. This is a guy who exhausts himself trying to earn what God just wanted to give him. You mean he could have just sat in an easy chair and, Dave, how do you know when you're working with God or against God? How can you tell? I mean, surely you're not saying I just sit my lazy boy and God just kind of blesses me. No, I'm not saying that. You work with God. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's real simple. I mean, you can tease it out pretty far on your own. And obviously then you can go deeper. But if you are acting in an unloving way, that's not part of His plan. If you are a nasty person, you have anger that erupts out of you, that's not part of His plan. If you act without thinking, no forethought, and you never talk to other people about what you're thinking, and so you don't get advice, that's not part of His plan. If you act without faith, that's not part of His plan. You can tease this out yourself very easily.